Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to the SCIP webinar series, and thank you for joining us. It's my pleasure to welcome you to today's program, Intelligence Function, Setting the Stage for a New Company, Vision and Mission. This webinar is a special preview of one of our keynote speakers' presentations at the upcoming European Summit taking place in Cascais, Portugal from 13 to 15 November. My name is Michelle Winter, and I'm the Director of Global Chapter Management and Education Programming here at SCIP, and I'll be moderating the program today. I just want to go through some simple guidelines to ensure that your experience is maximized. This is a live webinar. Your computer will show the presentation and stream the live audio, so make sure that your computer audio is on. All participants will be muted during the duration of the program. There is a Q&A function that will be active during the presentation that enables you to type your questions in for the moderator. Please feel free to type in your questions into the chat window during the presentation at any point. Our presenter has asked that we make this presentation as interactive as possible. We don't foresee technical issues. However, sometimes internet programs are subject to connection issues, excuse me, and should this happen, we will contact you regarding rescheduling. Our program today will be presented by Thomas Bailey, Senior Manager, Market and Competitive Intelligence at Rolls-Royce Power Systems AG. And with that said, let's get started with the program today. Thomas, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Michelle. Hello, everybody. Welcome to my presentation today. I hope to provide you with 20 minutes of very interesting insights on how we started the journey into managing our future. I'm happy to take you through the following slides. I planned my presentation so to have a quick Q&A after every second slide in order to have it as fluent and as interactive as possible. So let's start and roll into the topic. A short introduction to who is speaking and what background do I have or do we have. Rolls-Royce Power Systems is part of Rolls-Royce International. It is, with 19%, it is the second largest group within Rolls-Royce and represents around 2.7 billion pounds of revenue in 2016. Just to clarify, we no longer build cars. We do a lot, Rolls-Royce does a lot, but we are focused on civil aerospace, defense aerospace, and with power systems, we are focusing on propulsion systems for marine power generation and industrial applications. I just plotted a few pictures on the bottom of this slide of engines which typically leave our factory. Why am I showing this? Our environment is drastically changing. Engines more and more get observed as something that is harming the environment. Even though we have done plentiful measures to have the cleanest and the most technological advanced reciprocating engines, people still, in some of our market, perceive us as being a pollutant rather than somebody solving problems. I put this so bluntly and so directly, as this has been something within our company that really has been changing people's attitude of what we want to do in the future. This has been the motivation for us to really think about what is our role in the future and how can we prevent us from experiencing a Kodak moment. A Kodak moment, just let me put you back a few years. camera films have been the most, or Kodak has been the most popular player in the film market. They had a lot of activity in their laboratories to invent new products, new stuff. Nevertheless, if you go into a shopping mall today, you don't find, or you rarely find, Kodak films anymore. From a multi-billion-dollar business, they dropped down to a niche market in some rare applications. Certainly we don't want to experience that. And that is what my presentation is about. How can we as a business intelligence, market intelligence department help the business to foresee such events and prepare themselves for the change? Let me go to the next slide here. It's a concept. I did not invent that. I did not invent the VUCA world. A lot of people have been talking about that. A lot of books have been written about VUCA world. Nevertheless, it does really well describe how we see our environment. You know, if you look back in the reciprocating engine space, you had development timeframes of 30 years. You had one engine fitting global markets. If you compare that with today, you have emission legislations that change every 3 to 4 years. You have markets that adopt certain emission levels or does not adopt them. You have an environment which shows volatility never observed 2 decades ago or even 1 decade ago. If you just look back in the recent few years, we had the crisis increase, which got part of the stock markets tumbling. You had severe disasters which really impacted end markets and the investment behavior in end markets. These events are hard to foresee, and we as an intelligence function had to cope with that by really focusing on what are major trends out there, what are drivers of our markets, what is the key demand beyond the investment decision. Because, you know, sometimes people would need our product, but they will not buy it because they don't feel comfortable with their business environment and the consistency within their business environment. We as Market Intelligence Department within Rolls-Royce Power Systems have to guide our company looking forward, but also provide them with the right explanation of what triggers markets and what doesn't. The next challenge we derive from this VUCA world is just delivering data is not enough anymore for a market intelligence department. We also have to provide guidance on what do we do with that data? How do we interpret that data? And even how do we create new business models adopting your findings as a market intelligence department? Let me give you an opportunity here to shoot for the first few questions before I go into challenge 2 and onward. Are there any questions?
Yes, there are. First question is, how many people do you have supporting MI and CI?
Okay, at Rolls-Royce Power Systems, we have a team of around 10 people who, with their core activity, are playing or supporting MI and CI, but we also try to make that part of the functions in the sales teams. So we try to spread our role to as many departments and to as many branches as possible to get people to involve themselves into the methodology of MI and CI.
Okay, another quick question. Is your MI function centralized, and if so, where?
Yeah, we are centralized. We are reporting directly to the CEO, and we are part of the strategy team within the CEO's direct reports.
I do have one more question. Would you like me to ask it?
Yep.
Okay. How important do you rate consistency in your guidance versus adopting new trends?
That's also a very good question. With this VUCA concept here, you also experience that you have a lot of changing and moving parts out there. So what you could do is you could interpret the data today this way and probably provide an alternative interpretation in 2 weeks. What happens then? You confuse the business units and you confuse people within the business. So what we try to do is we try to have regular update periods. So we have once a year strategic planning process. During that, we update our models and our data and our interpretation of the data. We then release that, and this should stay in place for at least a year, where people get to use it. We do internal presentations on it, and we try to educate people on that. If we then experience major changes in the following year, we try to adopt them during the same time frame the next year and introduce them. We try to keep it as consistent as possible, and we try to maintain a story as long as possible.
There are no more questions at this time.
Can we go to the next slide? Here is something, a little snapshot of what we do within the company to inspire a broad discussion. We always try to get people involved from the different departments. We don't want the MI and CI to be just something within the strategy group or within our department. We want to roll this out to as many employees as possible within Rolls-Royce Power Systems. So what we regularly do is we break down the complexity into manageable small bits. What I did here is just print for you how we get from the external trend world, which you see on the left-hand side here, which is just citing studies that are out there, taking data that is available, making it available to our people, and then getting our people to think about, hey, how will this change our products, our involvement in our markets? Say, for instance, if you look at 2/3 of the oil will be depleted, how will that change a reciprocating engine manufacturer? We don't promote that it's the end of oil. Far away from that. We just say, hey, it gets harder and harder, and maybe there are opportunities for us as engine manufacturers to work on that. And in a third step, we try to get people to really think themselves about what kind of volatilities do they see in their application, in their neighborhood of daily work, so to say. So that's really our intention, to get people to discuss and think with us about how the world is changing tomorrow. And this thought process is propelled by us conducting scenario workshops. What we try to show here as this challenge 3, we try to show that scenarios that impact our business are multifaceted. They are out of the most different walks of life of markets, and we have to get a holistic approach to touch that. So that is something we do with our CFBUs here, customer-facing business units, with our people here in the operations, we talk with them. How do certain things impact our business, your daily work? We try to plot that with them, and we then try to consolidate all the feedback and get to a holistic view for the overall company. And we also try to always make people aware, why do we have to do that? If you look at these S-curves, which are very famous for a product lifetimes, if you look at what our product lifetime of the off-highway engine industry is, one could say maybe we are at this plateau up here, at this where it gets very hard to reach the next level of excellence in your product, where you have to invest a whole lot to reach a step forward. And that's the time when you have to think about, maybe there are disruptive technologies. Maybe, just to put one word out there, batteries are in the future one disruptive technology that takes away our markets. And this awareness we have to create. And we try to get people, and that's our fourth challenge, in the process of making market analytics into a vision and then derive a mission. We have to get the people to proact and to think about proacting. Maybe a break here and give the audience a chance for further questions.
Sure. First question is, Thomas referred to annually updating strategic models. I'm curious as to which models he finds most useful to maintain annually.
Yeah, okay, so maybe an explanation here. We have 22 sub-applications within RPS. We use the same drivers for our market analysis. So we use GDP, which is a trend and driver you can update regularly, yearly. But what you have to maintain is some of the technology things, like the combustion technology. There is not something changing severely every year on that. Or on the emission legislations. They change a lot, but not every year. So there are some things we keep in place, but there are other things which we have to update. Fuel consumption, for instance, is something we will update yearly.
Okay.
Any further questions?
Yes. How do you manage complexity?
Yeah, awesome. Very, very tough for us, as you know, in our business, the engineers are very detailed, and they want an Excel calculating everything from A to B and come up with C, which we in the market intelligence department can't supply, because we don't have statistics in our markets. We have to work a lot with drivers and with estimations. And this is something we really, really try to simplify, and which sometimes we're successful. Sometimes we learn that we haven't simplified it enough, but dialogue helps to reiterate and get better and better.
Okay, and I think this actually follows that question quite well. Are there scenarios that are harmonized throughout Rolls-Royce?
Yes, that's also something we're working strongly on with the Rolls-Royce central strategy team, is to have a scenario framework that fits for the whole group, so that if we talk about the future, we have 3 to 4 scenarios which everybody knows and which everybody tries to prepare themselves and their sales scenarios on. So, but then there's also some scenarios where we differ, where we go specifically into what our businesses need. So it's a mixture.
And where do you use the scenarios? These are coming in fast and furious.
So the scenarios, we use them for the strategic planning process. We use them for product development processes. Like, for instance, if you develop a new engine, you you go on a journey which takes 7 years, and in 7 years a lot can happen. So you have to prepare your product for being ready to fit the market in 7 years. So that's something where we strongly use scenarios. Also M&A topics, we use scenarios very broadly.
Okay, another question. I think this one has to do with what you just spoke about. How do you ensure that products are completed and introduced to the market rather than not finalizing it?
Yeah, that's something also we observed many times in the past. You start a product, if you're on a 7-year journey, you find out after 3 years we want to take a different path and you might not finalize it. So that's also something we can work with the scenario approach. We try to define products in a manner that they fit in the most different scenarios a market can show. If your product is agile enough, if your product development process is agile enough to follow these different walks of life, then you can complete it. And you have to do that planning in the beginning before you start your product development process. That's a big learning we had.
Okay, can we do one more question?
Yes.
Alrighty.
I'm a little bit short on time, but yes.
One more.
Yeah.
So this has to do with, I think, what we're still talking about. What kind of an involvement rate would you observe when you were dealing with insuring products, that type of stuff? I just kind of condensed the question a bit. So if it's not clear, let me know.
Involvement is something really which I will talk on the next slide as well. Involvement it's all about making things as simple as possible so people feel comfortable to discuss with you about the things. So that's also something I wanted to line out as the challenge number 5. You need to be able to get the people who assemble engines to involve themselves, as well as people who are regularly talking about scenarios in market intelligence or strategy. We found out that it has to be simplified, and you have to break it down to where it touches them. The advantage of doing that is you find faults in your own argumentation if you make it simple. Most of the times, if things are very complex, if you need to talk about them very lengthy, they are not plausible. So that's something really we try to ensure all of our BI and CI members to keep within their daily life, to ask people, am I simple enough? Where do you think we could strip off something? What you see here on that slide is really our trend radar. We pick 22 global trends which have a major influence on our markets. We plotted them. Every one of these cycles you see here represents a time frame. So the first one is short term, middle one is mid-term, and then you have long term. And what we try to do is tie every one of these trends to a tipping point factor. Like, for instance, natural gas. It is a trend we see in the next 5 years, which will impact our markets. It is already there. It's in a niche market currently available and being used. But for us in reciprocating engines, it's not a major market yet. We think this happens in 5 years. And we can tie it to a certain price difference between diesel and gas fuel prices. And we can tie it to a certain number of fueling stations you need to make that really a market. So these laws of how a market develops itself, we write them down, we challenge them in discussions with our people, and if you make it that simple, people want to talk with you about it. and you get a lot of insights, and you have to, nevertheless, at the end, you have to make your own setting, your own guidance. You can't make it as vague that everybody's opinion is represented. We as market intelligence team have to give precise guidance for one certain case. And that's the role we try to take. And really, that's all my discussion in Portugal in November will be about, is how do you create that? What were our key milestones on the way of achieving that? And how are we implementing it? So hopefully I will have a little bit more time there, and it's always better to talk to people face to face and to really create something together. I hope that in November we will have a great journey together and an inspiring session.
Thomas, thank you so much for such a informative and interesting program. Folks, if there are no more questions, I'd like to thank you all for attending. And Thomas, thank you so much for your time. We look forward to seeing everybody soon in Qashqai. Have a great day.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, everybody.